All right, let's dive in. We've got a really interesting set of sources today, articles, reports, all pointing to something specific happening very soon in Pocheon, South Korea.
Hmm.
And on the surface, it sounds, well, pretty straightforward. A group of local residents, they're getting together to plant some seedlings
Yeah.
by a stream.
Yeah, you see that and think, okay, nice community project, maybe some local beautification, that sort of thing.
Right, but if that's all it was, well, we probably wouldn't be digging into it like this.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Because these sources, they're quite clear. This is, well, it's framed as something much more significant than just a cleanup day.
Uh-huh.
They're suggesting this small local action could actually be a ground-level example of some pretty advanced global climate policy ideas in action.
Exactly. So that's our mission for this deep dive, to unpack these reports. We want to understand how this act, planting 2,000 seedlings in Pocheon, connects to bigger concepts. Things like natural-based solutions,
Climate-resilient development pathways, the stuff the IPCC recommends.
and even things like drones and AI, cutting-edge tech. We're exploring how these sources suggest that what starts with residents getting their hands dirty could actually be a kind of blueprint, a potential first-of-its-kind experiment for tackling the climate crisis in a really joined-up way.
Yeah, it's that micro-macro connection, how a small local thing might reflect something huge.
Okay, so let's start right there, the micro level. What exactly is this event the sources are focusing on?
So the reports are very specific. It's happening soon, the morning of June 12th.
Okay, coming right up.
Yeah. And it involves about 40 local residents. They're planning to gather at a particular spot, the bank of the Yeonjeongcheon stream.
And remind us where that is within Pocheon.
That's in an area called Gwanin-myeon, specifically Chojanri.
Got it.
And their task is very concrete, planting 2,000 Dapsari seedlings right there along the stream.
2,000? That's not trivial. That's a proper physical effort. And you said the sources really flag this as important.
They do. They don't just say planting event. They use terms like significant event, a start, even an experiment.
Hmm.
One source even uses the phrase, the first shovel, implying it's, the very first tangible step in a potentially much larger resident-led climate effort.
Interesting. So where did this idea originate? Why this stream? Why Dapsari seedlings? What's the backstory here, according to the sources?
Well, the sources really emphasize that this came from the residents. It wasn't like the city telling them to do it, not initially anyway.
Right. Grassroots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People from Gwanin-myeon itself, where the stream is, but also folks from neighboring areas, Yeonjeongcheon and Yeonjeongcheon. They were the ones pushing it.
And did they just start planting, or did they connect with the city officials?
That seems to be a key step. The sources detail this meeting just 2 days before the planting, so Juneteenth. Representatives from these resident groups actually met with the mayor of Pocheon, Baek Young-hyun.
Okay, that meeting sounds pretty important then.
It seems like it. The sources kind of frame it as this symbolic moment, right, where this bottom-up, resident-driven concern officially meets the city's, strategic thinking. It wasn't residents complaining and asking the city to fix it. It was more like, hey, we want to do this. Can we work together?
So what was their motivation? Why focus on the Yeonjeongcheon stream? What drove them to take this action?
The sources give us some really good insight here through quotes. There's Park Wang-bok. He's the chair of this group called the Pocheon City Carbon Neutrality Practice Citizens Council.
Okay.
He's quoted saying that for a lot of people, the term climate crisis, it felt a bit abstract, maybe distant.
Yeah, I can see that. Hard to connect with sometimes.
Right. So they decided, let's make it real. Let's ground it in something right here in our own backyard.
Which was the state of their local stream.
Exactly, the Yeonjeongcheon.
Right.
Apparently, it had become polluted over time, so their shared goal was, let's help bring it back.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this detail that comes up in a few reports, quite evocative.
Mm-hmm.
The stream used to have fireflies. Yeah. And you could catch fish. That memory of what it was like clean, alive, seems to be a really strong emotional driver. It's partly about restoring the stream, but maybe also restoring that connection, that memory, and hoping for something better for their kids.
So it's kind of a mix of looking back and looking forward, nostalgia and action.
I think so.
Oh.
Mr. Park is also quoted saying something like, planting even just one Dapsari seedling.
Yeah.
It's not just a plant, it's like planting a precious seed for the future environment their children will live in. It really highlights how personal this feels.
Okay, so they bring this very personal, motivated initiative to the mayor. How did he respond?
The sources say very positively. Mayor Baek expressed, deep gratitude for them taking the initiative, volunteering. He recognized it was significant.
Did he see it fitting into any city plans?
He did. He apparently connected it straight away to a big ongoing city project, the Pocheon Stream Blueway Project.
Blueway project.
Yeah, the goal of that project is basically to make the city's rivers more accessible, kind of give them back to the citizens. So this resident action slotted right in.
Ah, so it aligned perfectly with what the city was already trying to do.
Seems like it. The mayor specifically said this dapsari planting was a great chance for people to go beyond just hearing about climate change and actually directly feel and practice carbon neutrality.
Makes it tangible.
Right. Makes it real. And the sources add some context here. Apparently about 70% of Pocheon's population lives along the path of this Blueway project, which is like 30 kilometers long. So river health is clearly a big deal for the city.
Okay, so we had the local event, the residents' drive fueled by memory and hope, and the city's enthusiastic support linking it to wider plans. Now, this is where the report suggests things take a bigger leap, connecting this local stuff to global climate frameworks.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting, according to the sources. They explain that the method the residents are using, planting things like dapsari, instead of just, say, pouring concrete, is actually a direct example of what experts call natural-based solutions, or NBS.
Natural-based solutions, so using nature to fix nature's problem.
Pretty much, yeah. And the sources make this crucial link. This NBS approach is something explicitly recommended by the IPCC.
Big international climate science body.
That's the one. And the reason the IPCC likes NBS, according to these reports, is that it hits two goals at once. You reduce greenhouse gases, and you help the ecosystem recover.
How does planting dapsari do both?
Well, the plants themselves absorb carbon, right? Plus, they help stabilize the soil, filter the water, create habitats.
Yeah.
It all contributes to both climate mitigation and making the stream healthier overall.
Okay, so it's a more holistic approach, not just solving one problem in isolation.
Yeah, exactly. But then the sources introduce an even bigger idea, a broader framework the IPCC advocates for: climate resilient development pathways, CRDPs.
CRDPs. Okay, that sounds very academic. High-level stuff. What do the sources say that actually means down on the ground?
The sources describe CRDPs as kind of the IPCC's ideal model for the future. It's a grand strategy for how we can develop sustainably while dealing with climate change.
Right.
The pathway involves combining that ecosystem recovery we just talked about, like fixing the stream with NBS, with climate change adaptation.
Adaptation, meaning making places tougher against floods, droughts, that kind of thing.
Precisely.
Yeah.
A healthier river system is naturally more resilient to extreme weather. But the CRDP model, as the sources explain it, adds two more layers that are really key here.
Okay.
One is integrating climate technologies specifically for climate solutions, and the other is using all of this, the restored nature, the adaptation, the tech, to actually create new regional development opportunities, new economic value.
Ah, okay. So it's recovery, resilience, technology, and economic benefit all rolled together.
That's the idea. It's a whole package. And this is where Pocheon's other big strategic focus, mentioned in the sources, comes in.
The technology piece.
Exactly. The sources highlight Pocheon isn't just about the community planting. They're actively trying to grow advanced industries. And they specifically mention a focus on drones.
Drones. How do drones fit with planting seedlings by a stream? That seems like a bit of a jump.
It does at first glance. But that's the innovative connection the sources are pointing to. They mentioned Pocheon recently passed this unique law, the Drone Convergence Esports Promotion Ordinance.
Esports. Okay, now I'm really curious how that connects to climate.
Right. But here's the twist the sources highlight. This ordinance has a clause, apparently the first of its kind in the nation, that requires related industries, including the drone companies setting up shop, to actively participate in carbon neutrality efforts.
Wow. So they're basically building environmental responsibility right into the tech industry growth.
That's what it sounds like. It creates the framework. And the source is, quote, a Pocheon City drone specialist, Shim Kyol-gyu. He says, yeah, drones are great for esports, but they're also potentially excellent climate tech.
Okay, so how would they use them? For the stream project, for instance.
The plan described in the sources is to equip drones with different sensors. These drones will then fly over the Yeonjeongcheon stream and the surrounding area periodically, and they'll collect scientific data, things like water quality measurements, detailed ecological info about how the river system is doing, where they planted the dapsari.
So like high-tech monitoring from the air.
Exactly. And they mentioned using AI to analyze all that data. So it takes the residents' hands-on planting and backs it up with serious science. This data isn't just for show. The sources say it's crucial for scientifically managing the restoration and, importantly, for boosting the river's climate resilience.
Ah, right. The data shows what's working, what's not, how the ecosystem is adapting, allows them to manage it better over time to withstand climate shocks.
Precisely. It gives them the intelligence for effective long-term stewardship. And the sources add, the drones won't just monitor streams. They plan to use them to measure carbon absorption in Pocheon's forests, too, feeding data into the city's overall carbon goals.
Okay, now I see the link. The tech directly supports the ecological aims and the residents' initial work.
That's the synergy the sources emphasize.
Yeah.
They quote Choi Kwang-sek, who's the director of the Pocheon City Carbon Neutrality Support Center. He talks about combining the residents' practical action with this solid science and tech.
Right.
The goal is long-term resilience for the ecosystem. And, crucially, they see potential down the line to link this healthier environment, maybe even the tech story itself, to economic activity, like ecotourism, perhaps.
So, okay, let me try and piece this together. What starts as residents wanting to clean up their local stream?
Driven by memory and hope?
They use natural-based solutions, planting seedlings. The city supports it, linking it to their Blue Way project. Then, they layer on advanced tech drones, AI supported by a unique city ordinance.
To monitor, manage, and enhance the climate resilience.
So the overall aim of creating this integrated system that fits the IPCC's ideal model, the CRDPs, potentially even boosting the local economy.
That's exactly the picture the sources paint. They explicitly suggest this could be the domestic first case in Korea, where this big IPCC concept, CRDPs, is actually being built from the community level upwards, weaving together all these strands.
Wow. It really changes how you might think about climate action. It's not just big policies or huge tech projects somewhere else. It can also be, well, local people planting things, but connected to science.
And supported by tech, yeah. The sources talk about that cycle. Residents start the healing, tech provides the data to guide it, that leads to a more resilient ecosystem, and maybe that creates new opportunities, a positive feedback loop.
And it all comes back to that initial spark wanting to see fireflies again.
Yeah, that personal connection seems vital. The sources keep returning to that hope. They quote residents, like a Mr. Kim or Lee. The names very slightly, talking about remembering the clean stream, catching fish, seeing those fireflies. That memory fuels the action now, and the hope is that what they're doing in their little corner of Pocheon could actually be an example for others, maybe across the whole country.
So when those 40 or so residents gather on June 12th, planting those 2,000 Depsari seedlings,
We're looking at more than just gardening, according to these reports. Those seedlings represent this convergence. Community passion, connection to place and memory, smart technology, and this aspiration for a future that's both sustainable and maybe even prosperous.
it's like a living, breathing experiment in building that complex IPCC model, but starting with soil and water.
Exactly. Which leaves you with a pretty compelling thought, doesn't it? If this approach combining local action, restoring nature, and using advanced tech can take root in a town like Pocheon.
Could that model offer lessons for other places? Could this small experiment, born from a desire to see fireflies again, actually provide a scalable blueprint for climate-resilient development somewhere else, maybe anywhere else in the world? Something to think about as those seedlings start to grow.